The U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention has reported that the number of tick-borne diseases is increasing at a record pace, while the geographic range of ticks continues to expand. Recently, Instructor Carol was out on a hike with her dogs, and she does a pretty thorough tick check, but what she discovered when she got home is her thorough tick check wasn't thorough enough. With the increasing number of ticks and the rising number of tick-borne illnesses, with ticks moving into locations that they haven't been in before, it's really important that every dog owner knows how to do a thorough tick check. In this video, Instructor Carol is going to walk you through how to do a tick check. You're going to see how to remove a tick, and Instructor Carol is going to talk about some important prevention strategies for you and your dog. I'm Ken Steep, and welcome back to McCann Dogs.
Until about 5 years ago, I'd never even seen a tick. Then the next few years, I've been seeing 1, 2, 3 as they've been getting worse in our area. So I decided, okay, I will up the check a little bit and thought I was taking adequate precautions and I was doing a pretty good job of tick checking. Then I went out on a hike. It wasn't deep in the woods, wasn't super long grass. Went with a friend, and the trail was the other side of a subdivision, a little bit of industry around. So not way out in the wilderness at all. About halfway through the hike, maybe an hour plus in, my friend had commented that she was sorry she'd forgotten her long socks to tuck her pants in. And I said, I'm wearing shorts. I said, that way I can look down every once in a while, check that I don't have a tick. Well, I looked down and sure enough, there's a tick. That sort of freaked me out, but then I see a second tick, and a third, and a fourth, and a fifth, and a sixth. So now we are booting back to the car. No relaxing stroll. I'd forgotten my first aid kit with the tick remover. Maybe I wasn't adequately prepared. First of all, we find 10 on both of us. We get rid of those. Now it's time to check the dogs. So Burke's first. I find about 20 on him. At the same time, my friend's checking her 2 dogs and checking Thorpe. She finds nothing. She heads out. And I'm thinking, how could we both have so many? Burke has 20 and the other 3 dogs don't have a single one. So I do another thorough check on Thorpe and I find 1. It still doesn't add up that Burke has so many and Thorpe doesn't. So I start again. A little more pressure everywhere. And you know what? I found 19 at least ticks. I lost count. I had a whole jar full of them. I texted my friend, said, you better recheck. They rechecked a couple of times, and it wasn't until their 3rd check that they found at least 19, and more the following day. So overall, between 4 dogs, 2 people, we think we found over 80 ticks. Grossed out? I certainly was. Not sure whether I would ever leave the house again. But a couple of weeks after, I actually think it was maybe a good thing it happened. The ticks are way worse in our area, and they do present a real threat to both my dogs and my family and myself. So I found out that maybe my tick prevention wasn't as good as I thought. Maybe my risk level was too high. So I did a bunch of research and I've made a bunch of changes that I think puts my risk level and my dog's risk level way less. Now, my tick check, I used to think was pretty thorough. I would feel down my dog's legs, go down like that. I would check the ear. I would rub the skin. With my longer dog, I would use a comb and I could comb the hair back so that I could get down and see the skin. So that was what I did that day with the 80 plus ticks, and still only found 1 on Thorpe, and that was a 2nd check. Now, and even with Burke, it took me several checks. I went through, found some easily, but then the more I looked, the more I found. So one, I learned, we want to hope there's no ticks. Every time I touched my dog, I'm hoping I don't find one. But sometimes that means we don't look so hard. So now I sort of assume there's going to be at least 1. I start with Burke because if I find 1 on him, then I'm going to assume there's 1 on Thorpe. If I find 5 on Burke, I'm going to assume there's 5 on Thorpe. So now I'm hunting for something rather than assuming it's not there. Now, come here, Berkey. For one thing I'm going to do is take off any harnesses and collars, or I'm going to be checking underneath them at some point, because ticks like to hide in little spots, in little crevices. Now, 90% of the ticks tend to be on the front of the dog because, think about, their noses are everywhere. They're sticking their noses in. It's what hits grass first. So that's where most of them are. So I always think about tick prevention is risk management. So how much risk? So if I only have a really short time, I'm going to check the head, I'm going to check the front and chest, but I'm going to leave the back end. I wouldn't do the back end and leave the front. So how much time do you have? So I want to start where they're most likely. Again, they like it in a little spot. So I'll even check his nose. The other thing is, if you ever checked your dog's gums, pull back the lips, because it's not uncommon that they get in there. Picture how many times our dog's mouth is open. My guys love to eat grass. The eyelids is another thing, because sometimes we just think it's a little bit of dirt. Now, when you're looking for a tick, you have to remember an engorged tick could be as large as the size of a grape. However, the nymph ticks could be the size of a pinhead. So they're very, very difficult to detect. Ideally, I want to catch the tick before it's been on very long. The thinking is that if they haven't been on more than 48 hours, it's unlikely that they've transferred any disease, Lyme disease, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, to the dog or to myself. By the time they're engorged, it means they've been on for some time, so the risk to the dog is much higher. So I want to find those ticks before they get engorged, which is when they're tough to find because they can be very small. So I'm checking those eyelids, I'm checking his chin, and then I'm going to check his ears, but not just the surface of the ear. I'm actually going to look in. So I'll often have my phone so I can take a picture and magnify or zoom in. Plus, it's great to have that flashlight. His ears are very dark, so I can shine it in there. Thank you, Berkey. Good boy. And make sure that there's no little tick hiding right in there. Now, should mention that if your dog's the least bit uncomfortable being handled, as we do a more intrusive tick check, I can certainly be rewarding that too. And if your dog's not used to this, start out just with some light handling, not when you're looking for a tick, and just get them comfortable with that handling. These guys are pretty good with being held and inspected. Now, once I've done that part, I'm going to check cheeks and chin, and I'm going to try and touch every part. And I actually want to touch with my fingers with some pressure. And that's what I found didn't work that day when I was checking and missed 19 ticks or more on Thorpe. Because I was doing this and rubbing, the ticks are so small and they get in so tight in that hair. Even with Burke, when I rubbed, I didn't feel those ticks until I really put some pressure down. One of my things is if I'm not finding little bumps that are natural on my dog, little old scars or a skin tag, it tells me I'm not looking too much. Now, I know now where Burke's skin tags are. So I can say, yep, I know that's what that is there. But so I want to press hard enough so I feel any little thing. And I want to go over every little part. Then once I've done that, and I can look as well. With some dogs, there's much less hair. Light colored skin, white is much easier. But on the dark side, I found relies much more to my touch. Same, I found one little nymph tick on Burke, literally the size of a pinhead. I had to get my phone, take a picture, and expand it quite a bit to even realize it was a tick. I thought it was just a little tiny piece of dirt. I felt it. I don't think I ever would have seen it on him at all. Once I've done that head, I want to either take my collar off or move that, because again, and I'll check under the collar, make sure it's not tucked in there, because that's a key spot. Ticks like to get into those little crevices. Make sure there's nothing there. Then I'm going to go down and I want to actually check between each toe. So I want to look and make sure there's nothing there, and check underneath, make sure in those little crevices there's nothing, behind the stopper pad. And then again, with quite a bit of pressure, I'm going to feel every little bit along here. Now, I might even find a tick here because they have been out hiking this morning. And if I find a tick, probably a good time to mention that I don't start this without being prepared, because now if I find a tick, I want to make sure I capture it pretty fast. If it was live and fell off and crawling around, I need to get it. But the other thing is, I found one and then had to go get my tick remover and my other materials, and now it spends me 20 minutes to find the tick again. So I have my little first aid kit I carry on all my walks. I've got 2 tick removers, a little tick key. I've got my other tick remover. I've got some baggies that are sealable that I can put those ticks in. And I've got some alcohol wipes. Once I get that tick out, I can immediately give the spot a little rub. And then I would go back for several days, maybe a week, to make sure there was no sign of infection or anything going on. So now I've done both legs. Now I'm going to be doing the body. And same thing, I want to do quite a bit of pressure I find this side, this shoulder blade, for my guys is a fairly common part. They climb up the leg, and if they haven't gotten hidden yet, that's a spot I can find them. So I'm doing a fair amount of pressure. Again, I want my dog to be pretty comfortable that I'm doing this. Burke doesn't mind it at all. It's like a massage. What a good man. Now, I'm going to get Burke to stand, buddy. Now I need to do the back end. I would do the toes exactly the same way, feeling up the legs. I also, once I've done all that, I want to lift up my dog's tail. I want to check the tail, but often people are hesitant to really check that back end. But you know what? That's a spot ticks love. They go spots where they're not going to be found. So I can check right back there. Again, I could get my flashlight if there's a little more hair. I'm going to feel that whole back side. Good stuff, buddy. Nothing there. Good work. And then, bing. Bingaroo. And then I'm going to check his whole underside. Lets me check that chin again, those armpits, because again, little tight spot our dog, those ticks might love to get on. All the groin area I'm going to check. Good boy. You don't mind that at all, do ya? Yes, good boy. And that's when I'm going to say I'm comfortable my dog didn't have a tick. Good work. You passed inspection, bud. Now, with a black-haired, long-haired dog, the challenge is a little bit tougher. The ticks can really get into that fur. The white isn't quite as hard. The black is much tougher. Now, I'm going to be doing the same inspection that I would on the Burke, but with those ears, you can see there's so much hair. It's going to take me just a little bit longer to go in there and feel every little bit. And I need to get right in, because if I don't get right in there, I'm not gonna feel that tick. If I just rub my hand like this, I have found that's not gonna be enough. I need to get in there and apply a little bit of pressure. Same when I'm doing here. There's a lot more hair than Burke had or his chest. So he's getting a great massage out of this. I am really pressing a little harder so that my fingers are gonna feel any little imperfection on him at all. So with Thorpe, now I've cut this, but he has a lot more hair. So again, doing that toe check, I'm gonna rub my fingers in there as well as looking, or I could use my flashlight. Now, some people also use a comb. I have not found that has been hugely successful. It takes a long time, but you can see even when I comb the hair, it takes a fair amount to get to the skin, and then I'm gonna have to do that for every inch. I know some people, if they don't have quite a dense coat, will find a blow dryer and a comb. They can do that, but the important thing is we're getting to every point. With a dark-haired dog and darker skin, those nymph ticks that are the size of a pin are going to be very difficult to find, even if I can get to the skin. So I actually prefer that pressure. I have found it far more successful. When we get back into Thorpe's feathers, that hair is just so dense. I found trying to look through every little nick and cranny, I could spend an hour. So it's just the same process. I'm taking a little bit longer because there's all that hair. Now that's how I check for a tick. If you do happen to find a tick, Shannon's gonna walk you through how to safely remove that tick.
Here we go. We were having a little head pet. Despite all of our tick checks, we came across a tick a couple of days after an outing. So it's still alive. I can see legs. It's slightly engorged. It's probably been on there 12 to 24 hours or so. So I've got a tool here. It's actually for tick removal. It's called a Tickies. It's like a big elaborate tweezer. So what I'm going to do here is get as close to the skin as possible with this critter. And without twisting, just put steady pressure. And I'm not pulling really hard. We don't like the methods of dish soap and peroxide on cotton swabs, etc. Simply because, good boy Nettie, they actually cause the tick to regurgitate toxins back into the host. That's why they let go, is because they have to vomit. So we definitely do not recommend that method. Just steady pressure and wait. You don't want to put too much pressure on the abdomen of the tick, because then, of course, it is likely to rupture and those toxins will go back into the dog. So I am fairly amateur at removing ticks. I'm sure vets can probably get these out much quicker, but I do worry about detaching the head. It's generally not recommended to twist the tick. And as I'm seeing here, I can see that there's a little bit more of this critter showing up. We've got a little bit of hair caught in there too, so that can sometimes cause things to stop happening because you're pulling on the hair rather than the tick. Good boy, Ned, good. Oh, and there we go. It's not super lively, but still alive, which means the head, whoops, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was out of frame, which means the head is still intact. It's not been left in the dog. So you can see that took a little while. I'm kind of creeped out here holding this, but it's a good educational opportunity. And I want everybody to see that the tick is still alive. Sort of a fat and happy tick there. There was a leg movement there. Sort of a fat and happy tick, so there's not a ton of movement in there. However, it is alive, it is intact, and you saw how long with that just slight steady pressure it took before I was able to actually get that tick to detach.
Just a reminder, once you've removed that tick, I like to wipe it down with some rubbing alcohol. I keep that in my little first aid kit that I take hiking. So I'll wipe it down, and we want to check that spot, make sure it's not getting infected. So check it for the next few days, make sure it's doing okay. You also want to keep your tick. So I either keep a sealable baggie. At home, I have a water bottle. I put a little bit of water or rubbing alcohol in. And if I get a tick, I put it in there or in my sealable baggie if I'm hiking. I want to be able to identify what that tick is. I can also, if there was a problem, always have that tick checked. So whether you find one in yourself or whether you find one in your dog, it's not a bad practice. I know you just want to chuck it away, but it's a good practice to keep it in a sealed container in case you do need it. The other thing I decided on that walk is I'm not taking enough protection. It's not just about tick checks, because I learned it's unlikely I could find every single tick that got on my dogs or on me, and they might get carried into the house. So how am I gonna protect myself? Because they're a hazard to us as well as dogs. When I first had that incident with the ticks, I pulled out an old can of DEET. But after doing my research, I've actually gone to the Acaridin. DEET can be toxic to dogs. It also is very hard, or can be hard, on synthetic material. So I moved over to the Acaridin, which again, used appropriately, is safe. Some people even spray it on their dogs as a little extra protection. The other product is permethrin. Now, it was a term I'd never actually heard. Again, believed to be safe. It's been used in the military for a number of years, and in many countries, and now in Canada, you can actually get clothes treated with permethrin that are effective against repelling ticks, mosquitoes, and other insects. The permethrin is also safe to spray on dogs. Now, if you have cats, any product that you use to prevent ticks that has permethrin, it's dangerous for cats while it's wet. Once it's dried, after a couple of hours, it's perfectly safe for dogs, humans, horses, cats. So you can spray it right on your dog for a little extra protection and repellency. You can also get clothing. This is actually a dog bandana, and it has been treated with permethrin. So you buy it that way, and it will help repel and kill ticks if they come in contact with that. Myself, I bought some of the permethrin spray and sprayed some clothing, but I also sprayed my dog harnesses. So just a good thing, especially as ticks like to get underneath those things. Now, there's also natural sprays. When I looked into natural sprays, which I've used in the past, realistically, all science says at most they're about 20% effective. That would be the most. So when you look at those products, I did go onto the sites. I couldn't find any with any scientific data to show why they would work. Do I use this? Yes, I use this for years. Can't hurt my dog. And you know what? If a tick's gonna bite me, at least he has a bad smell in his mouth while he's biting me. So, but they're not totally effective for the number of ticks for me and risk management. If you live in an area where there aren't many and you really don't want chemicals, then that's a good choice for you. It's really about your risk management. You can also get tick collars. However, you have to be careful. You know, if you have kids, you might not want them handling it, or multiple dogs, they can pose a great risk. So I don't personally like to use those tick collars. I use a tick product. Now, I've switched over the years. Some have lost efficiency. There are two main types. There are edibles, which go into the bloodstream. There are also topicals, some of which do go into the bloodstream as well, others that don't, that go into the skin. Now, most research says they are effective. For most of the newer products, they're somewhere between 85 to 95% effective. Some of the products, the tick actually has to bite your dog to die. Now, the theory is it's going to die before it can transmit that disease because it's not going to be on there for 48 hours. Some of the topicals will also help repel. In some cases, I've found them very gummy on certain dogs for days after putting on. And again, if you have kids that might be touching it, you might prefer an edible product. It really is a personal choice. It's important to know they all have some degree of efficiency, fairly high, but none of them is perfect. So it really comes down to what level of risk, what suits your lifestyle, and what product you're comfortable with. You could also use two products. You could use an edible and a topical, and some people that are in high tick areas do that. You could use an edible and a permethrin spray on your dog, or add the Acaridin spray when you're going out. So there's a number of things you can do to protect your dog and your family depending on how big the risk is in your area. A couple important notes. DEET is toxic to dogs, so you don't want to ever spray it on your dog. The permethrin is safe to spray on our dogs, and it's safe for treating our clothing, but it's not to be sprayed on human skin. Regardless of the product you use to protect yourself and your dogs, you want to check with your vet. I did tons of research and reading, but before I made a decision that I thought was right for us, I still went to my vet, talked to him about what the products were for my dog and what worked best, what would be the safest for us, and do the best job of killing ticks. So make sure you check with your vet before you start a product.
Now, if you feel like your dog is fidgety or busy during these exercises, you might need to work on handling. If you need to get your dog more comfortable with handling, click that card right there. And if you're looking for some guided help through your training experience, make sure you check out the link in the description below to our Life Skills program for dogs 5 months and older, where one of our McCann instructors can help you through your training experience. On that note, I'm Ken, this is Instructor Carol, and this is The Burk. Happy training.